You want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered. And this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Doug Collins Podcast. Today, after the break, we're going to talk about some issues that are just, it's one of those times of the week. It's time to catch up. It's Monday. We got to catch up. Had a great Friday's Finest. Got a good week last week talking about the shutdown. We got a lot of things going on in D.C. coming up. I'm just going to hold off. In fact, and just to talk about the craziness of D.C., we'll get into that more later. Today, I want to hit some topics that we've been missing while we've been dealing with everything in Washington, while we've been dealing with everything else in, the craziness of the shutdown and for all the stuff that is going on. So right after the break, we're going to come back and we're going to get into some topics that you may have missed. I want you to make sure that you have a chance to weigh in on, look at, listen to, and be, smarter is the best way to put it. That's what we do here on the Doug Collins Podcast. We try to give you information that you can actually use. And when you actually can use them, it makes a world of difference. Because right now, believe me, the left is spinning things in such a frenzy, you would almost think that they were in a dishwasher or a dryer or something, because right now they are not letting anything go and they're spinning everything toward what they want. So stick with us, strap in. Right after the break, we'll get back to the headlines that you need to know. Hey, folks, when you look out and you see the country and just the disarray it is, you see the Biden administration, you see the wholesale prices have just went through the roof again. Inflation is tearing us up. If you have your finances all impinged in just a few areas, if you're just in stocks and bonds and you're not diversified, I got some news for you. You need a navigator. You need somebody to help you get to where you need to go with those finances. And I can't think of anybody better to do that than my friends at Legacy Precious Metals. You need precious metals in that portfolio. You need gold and silver. And Legacy Precious Metals, the folks there, they're the navigators. They know how to deal with tough times. They know and how to look ahead and take your personal situation and make it something that can be workable for you in the long term, because that's, at the end of the day, that's the one you're most concerned about. You need to make sure that your personal finances and your retirement are secure. You need folks like Legacy Precious Metals helping you in that. They will take the time to learn you. They'll learn your finances. They'll learn where your investment goals are, and they'll help you get there. And metals and gold right now, in this kind of crazy inflation, in this kind of crazy economy with the Biden's economy, is just, you need that help. And Legacy Precious Metals is the one to do that. So give Legacy Precious Metals a call, 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or you can always visit them online at legacypminvestments.com, and you can download their free investor's guide. Legacy Precious Metals, they're the ones you need. They're the navigators to help you to. 20th year anniversary, and over 80 million My Pillows have been sold. Mike Lindell and My Pillow wants to thank each of you and every one of you for giving you the lowest price in history on their My Pillows. You will receive a queen size My Pillow for $19.98. Regular price is $69.98, and just $10 more for a king size. You will receive deep discounts on all My Pillow products, such as bed sheets, mattress toppers, pet beds, mattresses, my slippers, and so much more. This is a time to try out something other than the amazing products that you've had your eye on. Go to mypillow.com, click on the radio podcast square, and use the promo Collins, Collins, to receive this amazing offer on the queen size My Pillow for $19.98, or call 800-986-3994. This offer comes with a 10-year warranty and 60-day money-back guarantee. It's time to start getting the quality sleep you deserve. You know how I know that? Because I sleep on a MyPillow every night. Go to mypillow.com and use promo code Collins, Collins, or call 800-986-3994 today. Okay, before we went to break, I talked about the fact that the left is spinning things. Let me give you an example. Last week, Joe Biden went to the picket line in Michigan. Now, this is unprecedented. A president has never gone to the picket line in a fight, even Republican. I mean, Democrats, Republicans. You've never seen this before. This is a first time, and stayed all of 87 seconds or so, like 2 minutes on the picket line. Stayed less than an hour in Michigan, and before running off to San Francisco to go do fundraisers. Now, the interesting part about this is even the right. The right you would expect, the conservatives saying, this is, something that, blaming a lot of this, on Biden and some other things that are going on, and especially with this push toward EVs and the electric vehicle debacle, which is actually costing jobs. Here's an interesting thing. Let me just put this in perspective, because I don't think we've talked about it much here on the podcast. What the UAW is asking for the first time, I think, is really getting to the point, I think, that people are going to see that unions have come to a point where they have had usefulness in the past. Their usefulness is getting outweighed by the leadership of those unions as opposed to the general membership. Now, we've talked about Randy Weingartner and the teachers unions and others. Sean Fain with the UAW. Teamsters are going the same way. This is really an interesting place, because when you look at where we're at in these negotiations, the left, especially in the unions, the leadership disconnect with the membership disconnect is becoming more and more. I use this as an example with the politics of Joe Biden going to just simply being seen on the picket line. And it's all about substance. It's all not about substance. It's all about perception. It's all about the picture. It's all about the prop. And right now, Joe Biden is becoming the presidential prop. He's put out on the stage in areas where, frankly, he shouldn't have been. His administration should probably have been doing a lot more to help negotiate this settlement. But when you get to the unions themselves and the disconnect between leadership and the rank and file, you start seeing the hardcore leftism of the leadership as opposed to the average working, hardcore working union man who just wants to get a job and go home and get a paycheck and take care of his kids and wife and family. This is where it's at, and it showed up in the the demands put forward by the UAW in this negotiation, where they start out. And I want you just to listen to this. If you're a person out there working in a regular 9-to-5 job, or maybe you're on your own business, or listen to these demands. They wanted a 40% increase, and they blamed it on the CEOs getting a 40% increase last year. So they're tying it again. They're sort of class baiting here. Saying, well, the CEOs are getting, 40%, so we're going to get 40%. It plays well to some, but the reality is, again, what you're basically is playing one off the other, and not really looking at the economy of what's going on here. Now, should they probably, with any of these big three, should these CEOs be getting the kind of, bonuses that they've been getting? I'm not going to say they should, especially when you look at the fact that the next point here is the big three is not the big three anymore. With Tesla, Toyota, Honda, and all the others that are, into the market, the Ford and what used to be Chrysler and then GM are not the companies that they used to be. They're not the big three in the sense of they dominate everything in the auto industry. Also, from a financial standpoint, in fact, if you just want to see a stock that has done absolutely nothing, look at Ford in the last, 10 to 15 years. It's just one of those that, and I'm just, no financial advice here. Just look at it. It's just not moved. And, this is, something that has to be taken into account. But then they get into the real bulk of the bond. They wanted the 40% increase. Now, if you take that out, there was economists who looked at this and said, if the automakers accepted everything that UAW wanted them to have, that it would take and increase their cost per hour, which includes benefits, pay, and everything else, from around $65 an hour average to over $135 an average. Have you been out to buy cars lately? I'm going to tell you, I have. You see this in the car price. This is where you're seeing it. Now, as opposed to, especially, which will lead to the next point, Tesla, which is at $45 an hour. Now, the reason I bring up Tesla is the administration is big on EV and big on the electric vehicle movement. Although they don't seem to be real thrilled with Tesla right now, because Elon Musk is not singing the song that they want to sing. So as you look at this, going forward, they're wanting more EV manufacturers. They're pushing the climate change agenda. They're pushing the new Green Deal, which, again, it would have been interesting to see Joe Biden explain to these union workers last week that the reason they're losing some of their jobs is simply because the new Green Deal and the other push by the government to make electric vehicles is costing them jobs because it takes fewer people to make the electric vehicle. Now, think about that for a second. The same president who says he's Union Joe is also the same president who's pushing a climate change agenda and a new Green Deal agenda that is actually costing them jobs in the long run because it takes less people to actually make these cars. So as we look at this, I want you to think, as we get into the perceptions, as we get into the mindset, it really bothers me now that we're actually looking at a president who has no seemingly any more core values, but yet is being willingly used by the left in every possible way to prop up the most leftist agenda. I mean, actually way further than we saw a lot of times, even with President Obama. So again, as you're sitting here looking at this, and more than likely as we're looking at this strike continue, it's not about the jobs. But and the last point I wanted to make on this was the other thing. They wanted to work 32 hours for 40 hours worth of pay. Now, they wanted the 40% increase, but they only wanted to work 32 hours for the 40-hour pay. Again, construction workers, plumbers, everybody else in the world, I mean, again, that's out there on lines, this is just, again, it's hard to sell. And I get it that they took a big hit back in the early 2009, 2010 timeframe. I get they took the hit, the workers, and they do need probably to renegotiate this contract. It probably does need to reflect a different variation of what the world looks like now as opposed to what it did then when they gave concessions. But when you put out concessions, when you put out demands like that, showing seemingly no willingness to come to the table, to look at any other things, then, again, I think that instead of a resurgence of union power, even if they get part of this deal, I think it's, again, turning more and more companies off. You're going to see, instead of bringing these jobs back, you'll see the Fords and the GMs use more plants in Mexico. You're going to see them go to other places where the labor cost is just higher. Because at the end of the day, if you're putting out a product that people can't afford, including those workers on your own line, you got a problem. That's the first problem. As we look at this in our context of today's lessons, is when you're running a presidential office by photo op and props, this is what you get. In fact, this is just, again, something unprecedented, but this is what you see from the Biden administration. Let's continue on into some of the topics that are around right now. It is also interesting to me that the left continues to tout bad criminal justice policy, such as not, with a bail policies that do not take into account behavior, that do not take into account things that are actually should be, we should look at when you're dealing in cash bail, which, by the way, for most is not the deterrent that people make it out to be. But when you're not having DA's offices prosecute crimes, you're not having DA's office prosecute low-level crimes, we're not seeing any kind of punishment for doing things that we should be, then you got a problem. And right now we're seeing retailers in the last year lost $112 billion to theft in 2022. This beat previous records of about $18 billion. So, I mean, we're way over point here. Retailers reported losing a record $112.1 billion to inventory shrink in 2022, according to National Retail Federation's annual security risk. The external theft was the largest contributing factor to shrink, followed by the theft of employees. Combined, the two categories of theft account for roughly 2/3 of total shrink. Nearly half the survey respondents said they reduced specific stores' operating hours in response to retail crime, while 28% reported closing specific stores altogether. Los Angeles area was the metro's area most affected by organized retail crime in the country, followed by San Francisco, Oakland, Houston, and New York, ranked 3rd and 4th, respectively. No wonder, and the articles go on, as many articles that Target is getting ready to close many of its stores across the country. You're seeing in Atlanta, Walmart and Walmart food stores closing, only one of them opening back up. Why? Because of the violence and retail theft around them. Folks, we have to have a balanced approach to criminal justice reform. It has to be something that matches the crime. It has to be something, the punishment has to match the issues that are going on, but it also has to, be something that can be workable and also look toward getting people back into society with usable, workable skills that can actually be beneficial to them. but you can't just let it go unchecked. And it's interesting to me when I look at these names of these cities that were actually listed just now: Los Angeles, San Francisco, Oakland, Houston, New York. All these cities are Democrat-run cities. These are liberal cities that have been liberal cities forever. Okay? And when you look at these, you can't just simply say that this is a phenomenon just to these cities. Well, you have to look at the reasons it's a phenomenon. They're not prosecuted. You have Soros attorneys, district attorneys. You have prosecuting crime, Gascon in Los Angeles, who doesn't want to prosecute anything. You have San Francisco, which we've already talked about on this show, is just an utter dumpster fire. Oakland, right across the bay, is another dumpster fire. Houston, New York, similar problems going into this. And if you've been in New York City lately, you see this on the subways, you see it in others. But it goes back to a thought process that if they believe they can get away with one thing, they believe they can get away with another. And our police are overwhelmed. The district attorneys are not backing them up. And the prosecutors, in many ways feel they're overwhelmed. So I just want to bring this out to you that at some point in time, give this, if you can, take this podcast, give it to one of your liberal friends and just ask them the question. What is it about these cities that causes this kind of theft, that causes this kind of chaos? We haven't even got into Seattle and Portland, where they just, inner city, CVS's and Walgreens and others have just closed their doors. Okay. We're not even touched those cities where the liberals have just run wild with problems. You have homelessness is just everywhere. In fact, there's another report just the other day that drug overdoses in San Francisco will reach its highest total in history. So, I mean, when you look at this, the question becomes, and don't let them give you the answer, well, it's just because the economy's bad and they don't have jobs. So, okay, so you're telling me if I don't have a job or I can't get the job, that I'm going to turn to violence. I think there's some aspects of that could be correct, but there's a lot of aspects of that just says the permissive attitude of these cities is causing the issues that we're seeing. You can't just blame this on a bad economy. I mean, look, there's bad economies and also in conservative-run cities. There's bad economies that people are not being able to keep up with inflation in my hometown. But you don't see a skyrocketing crime retail theft rate because actually things are punished. And there is a cost to doing something. So as we continue down this path, and we can always talk more, and we're going to as we go by more about theft and criminal justice reform and the things that we need to do. There are things that we need to do, but first and foremost, it has to start with people being safe and there being accountability in the system. We don't have either right now in many of these big cities, and thus you see what you are seeing. While we're in California, we're talking liberal, just outrageousness. Last week, Governor Gavin Newsom, who has his suits all pressed and packed, ready to, if Joe Biden decides he can't run anymore for president, to jump in. To continue the prop to the left mentality, Gavin Newsom last week signed, starting next July, a state tax of 11% on retail sales of guns, gun parts, and ammunition. The money would be used for gun violence prevention, enhanced school safety programs geared toward the victims of violence. What's really interesting to me is that they're going to split up, saying the first $75 million of that money must go to California Violence Intervention and Prevention Program, grant program. And then after that, this would include sports program, tattoo removal, life coaching. Okay. Again, I'm not making this up. This is in the law. And then the next $50 million would go to the State Department of Education to boost security at public schools. Why wouldn't that be reversed? If you're really concerned about, first and foremost, the things that stop people from shooting in certain areas is, number one, they know that there is security there. They know that they cannot do what they want to do, and that there are proper protocols put in place to deal with it. Number one, we saw this in Nashville. We saw it other places. They look for soft targets. Schools, unfortunately, in many of our parts of our country are soft targets. And what Governor of California, Gavin Newsom, has decided to do, that it's much better to put in more money to tattoo removal and other things than it is in sports programs, which are all good. Don't get me wrong. I think that's a part of what you need to do in any of these places to help combat and giving life skills to young people and others who may be susceptible to gun violence and doing things illegally with guns. By the way, most of the guns they get are purchased illegally. They're not purchased through this system. So really what he's doing is taxing law-abiding citizens who want to purchase guns, parts, or ammo. Let's just be real frank about this. This will not hit criminals, Gavin. So you're just punishing your own members of your own state. Let's just be honest here. You're punishing law-abiding citizens of your own state for using their Second Amendment rights. But again, you're also showing to me your hypocrisy in putting school safety after you do all these other basically social programs. Why don't you flip that around and put the first $75 million toward hardening your schools and getting security in your schools and working toward getting the gangs and stuff out of your schools instead of then doing the other part of this. But, again, what's logic for a state like California? What's logic for a state that is basically taxing its people to death? Most people are leaving to go to other places because they just can't take the economy anymore. They can't take the continued lawlessness of places like Oakland and San Francisco and Los Angeles, even down to San Diego and others. They just can't take it. And then you tell on top of that, the taxes that just keep getting burden to burden. Now, I do want to point out something. For those of you who say, well, that's just another, 11 cents on the dollar. It's not that big a deal. Let me also let you understand there's already a federal excise tax of 10% on wholesale prices for handguns, 11% for long gun and ammunition. This has been on there forever. And also for you liberals out there who don't like hunting and fishing and gun, remember, it is hunters and fishermen that fund the conservation programs in this country, period. They do the vast majority through these excise taxes and through others. We fund, those of us who hunt, fund these programs and make sure that you have the trails and have the public lands and make sure that you have the conservation exercises that are going on to make sure that our wildlife is flourishing, from ducks to deer to moose to elk to everything else. It is the hunters that do this through the extra price we pay to buy the things that are legal under the law in this country. So I don't want to hear, this fact that, well, they're not taxed enough. Again, this is the backdoor way around the Second Amendment, folks. And it's not really a backdoor way. It's just a truth. It is a way that the liberals can look at this and say, well, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to tax it out of existence. Does that not sound like a perfect Democrat plan to everything? Well, we don't like it. We'll just tax it out of existence. Gavin Newsom, I could never win the governorship of California, and you could never win the governorship of Georgia. You will lose the vast majority of counties in this country, just like every Democrat has lost in the last few elections. Now, you'll make it up in areas of liberal bastions in which they don't think about things like this, or they prefer just to have things, more on a government control basis and let the government deal with everything else that you were doing. But this, again, bottom line, this isn't going to do anything. You're just taxing your people so you can spend money on pet projects and go around the state and saying, look, here's the money that I gave. I put a program in. I gave money to do this. And the reality is, if you want to actually cut down this violence, you actually prosecute gun crimes, number one. Number two, you actually harden your soft targets, which is the second choice in this bill. And, you deal with law enforcement, giving them the tools and the resources that they need to actually carry out their jobs. And you find actual prosecutors who have a backbone who actually prosecute cases. If that's what you want to do, if you really want to deal in the issues that are giving more and more problems to your communities, then deal in the real issues. But before we go, I also have to stick with our wonderful governor in California, Governor Newsom, and has ensured that in addition to basically just another useless tax on things he doesn't like, sin tax is what he calls it. I didn't know it was a sin to actually use my Second Amendment rights. I guess if his First Amendment rights a sin tax, are you going to tax that? I mean, are these other things, are they sinful that I would use the Bill of Rights that the founders actually enshrined for all Americans? Come on, Gavin, get a grip. But also here's the last one we're going to touch on today for Governor Newsom, and that really sees how out of touch the many on the left are. National Review reports Governor Newsom last week signed a bill that prevents states from more than more than 10,000 schools from banning or censoring books over concern regarding racial or sexual themes, resulting in fines for any school that disobeys the law. The legislation, which was known as AB 1078, forbids school boards from removing or censoring textbooks or library books, even if they do include divisive content such as critical race theory or pornography. This law, which takes effect upon immediately signature, was enacted in response to the governor's debate with school districts over whether the latter can remove or censor any books that perpetuate left-wing ideology and immoral content. So really what's happened here, the Governor Newsom says it's okay to have sexually explicit material in our elementary schools in non-age appropriate atmosphere that discusses sexual acts, blatant sexual acts, pictures that show sexual acts. Again, if you're an adult and want to read this, go at it. Okay? 18 and over, and even some stuff, again, I would disagree with some, there's some books in, high school, 11th, 12th grade high school years, that may challenge your thinking about something, especially some great literature that's been actually put out there. But when you got books that are put in for fifth graders that talk about sexual acts in explicit details, we're not talking about, hey, two people got together and they look like they had fun. No, we're talking about I took my and put her or him and this. I mean, these are stuff I'm not even going to talk about on this show. But this is what Governor Newsom. You want to know what the left stands for? Here you go. I've said this before many times. It is the best time in the world to be a conservative. Is the best time in the world to be just someone who loves freedom, but also is willing to say, look, this is not right. There are standards, and not everybody can do what's right in their own eyes. And this just right now, if you have, people will agree with you on this. It is only a very vocal minority that is pushing this kind of crap. But if you want to continue this in our public schools, it's one of the reasons why private schools are flourishing so much. It's why school choice is flourishing so much. It's why parochial schools are flourishing so much, is because when you look at what's going on in these public schools, why are we fighting over putting pornography in our elementary schools? If you can't buy it legally, why are you giving it away for free? Especially to those pushing an ideological agenda, whether it be homosexuality, transgender, or just free sex, free love. It doesn't matter. Now, if you get older, do anything you want to do. That's the First Amendment protects you. You go read whatever, you write whatever, you sell whatever. That's what you want to do. I may disagree, and I might not want it. I may not buy it. I won't buy it. But, there are others that may, and if that's what you want, go at it. But Governor Newsom, to continue down this path of simply thumbing your nose or pandering to every liberal idea, folks. And the reason I talk about California so much is in historical terms, California has been the bellwether of other liberals across the country. And we see it not just in liberal states like New York, Illinois, others, but you'll see it in places like Alabama and Georgia. It just moves from there because we'll see it in our media. We see it in our movies. We see it in other places. So, folks, I touched on a lot of places today, but the left is getting more and more prop driven. And they're using the president as the biggest prop that they have right now. They put him on a picket line, which Democrats even were screaming that should not happen, not in the way it should. We're seeing Republicans, we're seeing governors such as Gavin Newsom, try to tax guns, your Second Amendment rights out of existence. We're seeing, though, on the other hand, it's okay for kids to see pornography. These are all the things that the left are doing right now. You need to wake up and see this. Conservatives, we got our own problems. In D.C., we got to get our stuff together. We've also got to do a better job explaining how freedom actually works, but also there has to be protection for our families, our kids, and others going forward, that we cannot get into this idea that whatever we want is okay just simply because we feel it. You got to have the ammunition you need. That's why we have these podcasts. That's why I'm glad to have you join me today. That's why we touch on issues you may not have heard of, but I want to give you the information that you need to take out and discuss it when people bring it up. So next time, we'll see you on the Doug Collins Podcast.